And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what?
China.
All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit, like God's property. It's hard to market, so we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. 'Cause when you got the drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the
I was very excited when I first started to get evidence, and it was so counterintuitive. I'd put 20 Europeans and 20 African Americans on a sheet of X-ray film, and every African American showed differences, and all the Europeans looked the same. And I thought I'd mislabeled something, or I thought I'd made some drastic mistake. And we kept repeating and repeating things. As we got more samples from different areas, I realized that it was a difference in the pattern, and that this whole new type of evidence based on mitochondria was going to change the way we thought about modern humans.
Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggests he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafse and Shkul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa over 100,000 years ago. Those modern humans may well have gone up the Nile corridor. Those modern humans may well have gone up the Nile corridor.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them. With the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
Now I can't figure it out. If y'all are the chosen ones, shouldn't y'all be obeying better than me? I mean, I even try to keep the fourth commandment. Try to keep the Sabbath day holy. I've spent many of hours trying to figure out which is the right Sabbath day, because we know that old Catholic Church, something a little fishy about them, don't we? With that white Jesus. I mean, here's a white guy telling you black people that your Messiah is not a long-haired white European guy. Your Messiah is Hebrew, my darker-skinned brothers and sisters. When are you guys going to wake up and become kings and queens?
Okay, I was just thinking about this morning. I grew up Baptist. I went to Vacation Bible School. I've read the Bible. I don't know if I'm interpreting it correctly, but if we are made in God's image, right, and the first modern humans originated in Africa, if God has a human form, God is black. God is black.
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
I want to say peace and blessings to everyone. I want to apologize for pushing this lesson back a few times, kind of like kicking the can down the road a little bit. Had a lot going on. So we're going to get into it tonight. I decided that I want to kind of cut the intro short. Got a lot of information I'm going to cover. And, if you have any questions, I just ask that you save it for the end of the presentation or post your comments or questions inside the comment section after we conclude. But I just really wanted to go back over what I taught about a week ago, dealing with the end of the world. And I know I touched on the beginning of sorrows, and I also alluded to the Great Tribulation and a number of other things. So what I wanted to do with this lesson, I want to go back over the beginning of sorrows, also do a separate lesson, really explaining the Great Tribulations, just to kind of undo a lot of the westernized. Matter of fact, I'm not just going to say westernized, because some within the Eastern Church per se teach some of the similar principles when it comes to end time prophecies or eschatology. And I really want to use this as opportunity to just walk you through, explain some key terms to you guys, so that way we can really set the tone for the overall lesson. Because I know that there's a number of people that are teaching the end time prophecy per se. I know many are still holding on to European or Eurocentric or foreign influence over the text, when it comes to understanding the biblical text. So I want to start off by saying this, that the entire scriptures, the entire Dabar HaKodesh, the Holy Word, this entire Bible, is all about the rise, the fall, and the redemption of Israel. How the Most High handed the covenant down, how it transitioned from Adam to Noah to Shem to Abraham, and then from Abraham to his seed, Israel. That's what it's about. It's not all this other stuff that Europeans and other groups, other nations, with their poor understanding of the culture of the ancient Israelites, began to create doctrines based off of what they assumed. Just not all these different covenants that are floating around. It's the doctrines of men that have created this thought with the old covenant, the new covenant. the Old Testament, the New Testament, the multiple covenants that, stems from the theology of systematic theology or charismatic theology. I'm not trying to go geek mode on you guys. So what I want to do here, I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to show you, as I did last week, I believe, when I walked you through my initial way based upon the Eurocentric approach, and that is, placing the church at the forefront of everything, placing the church as if the church replaced Israel. That's absolutely incorrect. And I don't have a problem with engaging in discussion with other groups that believe so. Because I just, I could just stay with the scriptures and knock down any doctrine that many would use to try to justify these warped Christian, Catholic, Islamic, Judaism, or Judaic theologies. In other words, study of, in the Greek theology, study of Elohim. But anyway, they'll say study of God. So let's go to get into a family. I don't want to, take too long or get into the lesson. Let me just do a couple of things. Let me drop a link here. Let me drop I didn't set up my Cash App here. Let me set that up real quick. And then we'll get into it. It's really straightforward, family. It is not complicated. The problem is we have so many brothers and sisters, that are in this awakening, and those that are outside this awakening, that just don't want to let go and just start over. I had to start over. For one, as I pointed out, I was a end time prophecy eschatology geek. And I stopped teaching it for a while, for years. The Most High told me to, because I needed to start over with certain things, especially my approach to the holy text. But anyway, let me do something real quick. Let me slide this over here. I'm going to say shalom to Elder Hall in the building. Shalom, Elder. Let me see here. Let me post this inside the chat. My Jersey City buddy, Elder in the building. Family, show some love to Elder Hall in the building. He's one of the elders at PFR. But holding things down. Some of you guys probably remember seeing Elder Hall on many of the travels that I would go up and down the coast, and he'll be basically rolling with me. But anyway, I want to say shout outs to you. I want to say shout outs to all of you guys. So let's go and get into it. And we'll use this as we progress to do some additional shout outs. All right. So I just went on to post the Cash App. But again, I'm going to go ahead and try to get into this as quick as I can, because there's so much information I'm going to cover. All right. So let's go ahead and stretch this window out. All right. And family, I'm going to say this again for moderators, if anyone come in kind of like late into the discussion, or if they are trying to take away from the discussion or reteach, whatever the case may be, or being a distraction, give them a warning. And if they continue to go against the guidelines, the rules of this platform, or should I say this channel, just go ahead and kick them out altogether. Because we over here, we're very respectful. And I know everyone is trying to learn. Every last one of us are trying to learn. And so I'm just going to walk you through, family. So let's go and get into it. The beginning of sorrows. We got a lot to cover, family. Now let me set my mouse up here. We have a lot to cover here. So let's get into it. A lot to cover. I want to start off with this thought here, because I'm going to lay the foundation and give you guys an understanding of eschatology. I know some of you guys probably heard this term before, but I want to make sure we understand with clarity what eschatology is. All right. So I'm going to use a reference from the Oxford Handbook of Eschatology. I'm going to use this as a source. I'm not going to go too deep in it, but I want to use this so that way you guys understand key words. So when you listening to others that are trying to give you prophecy or they mention these terms, you know exactly what these terms mean. And then also this is going to build up your discernment so that way you can actually identify if what others are teaching are lining up with the word. And you can kind of get an idea whether or not if they are actually teaching biblical directly from the scriptures, or if they are teaching still under the influence of the Christian church, Christian Catholic Church. Actually, I should say Catholic Christian Church, because the Catholic Church and what we see today, the Protestant churches, the Reformation, all of that comes directly from the Roman Catholic Church. Anyway, let's start here. Jerry Walls, this is a quote of his from the Oxford Handbook of Eschatology. He says, Israel's theology was intensely grounded in time and space, and especially in the events of Israel's own history. So I want to make sure you guys understand this, right? I want you guys to really understand this. When we're dealing with prophecy, when we're dealing with whether it's future or if we're dealing with the past, whatever the case may be, everything starts with Israel. It does not start with the church. It does not start with the replacement of Israel, which the church teach and many teach. It does not start with covenant theology, because covenant theology is nothing more than replacement theology. Replacement theology is synonymous to covenant theology. So this has nothing to do with that. Anyone that is taking that approach, saying Israel replaced or has been replaced by the church, replacement theology. They're teaching a broken covenant. All right. So anyway, Israel's theology was intensely grounded in time, space, and especially the events of Israel's own history. So what is eschatology? What is eschatology? This is coming again from the Oxford Handbook of Eschatology by Jerry Walls, page 24. Development of the concept in Israel. The term eschatology itself is not easy to define, although its etymology is clear enough. Derived from the Greek eschatos, in other words, last, or eschatos, however you want to pronounce it, the term eschatology represents the branch of theology devoted to last or final things, such as death and judgment, heaven and hell, and the end of the world. It is routinely assumed that the study of study of eschatology of necessity includes a clearly formulated concept of the end of the world or of end time, with a pronounced doctrine of resurrection and individual judgment, initiating a radically new era of salvation, distinct and discontinuous with current reality. Such conceptions are rare in the, I want to say, renewed covenant, because I don't like to use the word old, because when we say old, in with the new, out with the old, and the law and the prophets were never referred to as an Old Testament, an Old Testimony. Anyway, so I like to say the established covenant. That's what I refer to it as when you really study the fullness of the text. So again, such concepts are rare in the established covenant. And if we limit eschatology to such a narrow definition, right, this chapter would be exceedingly brief. All right. So just to give you guys clarity, there is a number of different eschatology theologies that exist. Some of them are Jewish, right? The Jewish community as we know them, the name stealers, Muslims, Buddhists, and Hindu.
there's a number of variations of eschatology and the distinct of the Catholic Christian traditions and theological movements. Let's break this down. So there are, excuse the typo here, there are Roman Catholic, they are Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, fundamentalist, Pentecostal and charismatic theology, process, liberation, and eschatology, and Christian feminist theologies. So this is far more, but I'm just giving you guys the understanding that there's so many different eschatologies, just starting within the Catholic Christian Church. And this is where the problem is, right? Let me read this again, so you understand the different eschatologies here, right? And we're now dealing with the umbrella of the Roman Catholic Church. They are Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, fundamentalist, Pentecostal and charismatic theology, process, liberation, and eschatology in Christian feminist theologies. So here's a key point. They are Roman Catholicism again. Let me say that again. When we start dealing with the main things that you deal with in Christianity, and some of this have bled into, or should I say, seeped into this awakening, you'll still see eschatology of Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, Protestant, fundamentalist, Pentecostal and charismatic theology, process, liberation, and eschatology in Christian feminist theologies. So despite the fact that in the doctrine of ta eschata, in other words, the last things, the whole Christian doctrine, in other words, creation, incarnation, redemption, right, deification, finds its fulfillment. There is little explicitly defined in the formularies of the Orthodox Church, hardly anything more than 2 phrases in the Nicene Creed. See, that's the point I really want you guys to understand, that you'll see a lot of this eschatology that you hear goes all the way back to the Nicene Council, the Nicene Creed. So the Nicene Creed is what many of you guys may have heard or been introduced to by way of what is called the Statement of Faith. And I'm sure all of you guys have heard the Statement of Faith before. You know, whether it's in Kojic, whether it's in the Baptist church, whether it's the Methodist church, we believe the Bible is the only holy, inspired, written word of God. That phrase, that is what is called the Nicene Creed. That comes from the Council of Nicaea, 321, because the whole reason for them coming together wasn't to create Christ, wasn't to create Bibles, or canonization or canonical Bibles and all that. That wasn't the goal of it. It was the primary thing that they wanted to address was Gnosticism, trying to determine whether or not if Christ was born divine or if he, when he was resurrected, became divine. If he was a demigod or, all those different things. That was the primary argument when you're dealing with Athanasius and you're dealing with Arius. Not getting too geek mode. I'm going to a little geek mode, but not going too geek mode. So Athanasius was the one that what you would consider to be orthodox. Arius is the one that you would consider to be unorthodox, a Gnostic. And he had a lot of influence on Origen and some of the others. Ultimately, the manuscripts that many call the Alexandrian manuscripts, and this is where you get like the NIV comes from, which is broken off into 2 key groups: the Vatican, the Vaticanus, right, which is of course Vatican, and the what is the other one? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they are broken into 2 codexes. You had the Vaticanus which is the Vatican. And then, oh man, I can't think of it right now. But anyway, it'll come to me. But nevertheless, this is what the whole agenda was about, was trying to establish continuity among the Roman Catholic Church. All right. So the two phrases in the Nicene Creed are Sinaiticus. That's what I was thinking about. You have Sinaiticus and you also have Vaticanus, right? So Sinaiticus, Vaticanus, and the Vaticanus or the Vatican, that is supposedly the church, the Catholic Church would say that they found these manuscripts like in the 15th century, like in a garbage can, some crazy stuff like that. But anyway, getting back to the point here, the two phrases in the Nicene Creed are, "He is coming in glory to judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. And also, I await the resurrection of the dead and the life of the age to come." So I just want to lay the foundation with that. Okay. So now let's get into the beginning of sorrows. What is the beginning of sorrows? So family, I am going to go geek mode on you guys. I'm going to give you a lot of information. And I want to also say this too, because I get comments of me posting sources. The sources are posted. It's in the presentation. For those that really want to know the sources, watch the presentation. I'll copy some inside the comment section. I may even copy some inside the description. But if you really want to learn, if you really are seeking the truth, watch the video, and all the sources are listed within it. Then you can write it down. Then you can go ahead and purchase them, vet them at your leisure. See, we have to get to a place where though we're no longer trying to, or should I say, have the expectation of being spoon-fed or everything done in a microwave. We have to be willing to invest time, invest resources, invest effort as well. Anyway, so what is the beginning of sorrows? What is the beginning of sorrows? We're going to start with Matthew chapter 24, verse 1 through 4. That's what we're going to highlight. And we're going to just kind of use this to kind of lay out the foundation here for some of the other lessons I'm going to do over the next couple of weeks. And Yahushua, in other words, Jesus, went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him to shew him the buildings of the temple. Verse 2, and Yahushua said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Verse 3, and he sat upon the Mount of Olives. The disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? Verse 4, or actually verse 5, I'm just going to go all the way down to verse 8. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach, in other words, Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Verse 7, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilence, earthquakes in divers places. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. Bara'ah or bara, makabai, and I'm just reading the Hebrew words here. Bara'ah or bara, maka'abai or makabai. All right, so that's the Hebrew words for beginning of sorrows. So let's unpack this, family. We got a lot to unpack here. We have a lot to unpack here. Okay, when is the beginning of sorrows? Now, there are some, And I've even seen it in the comment section of my last video, to the point that I even had to block some of the people that was commenting, because it got to the point of being just flat out disrespectful. Family, I understand every last one of us are going to have different opinions and we are entitled to it. But when you lay things out, and I lay everything out, and someone wants to be argumentative, guess what, family? Start up a platform, start your own platform, and then you can teach whatever you feel, whatever opinions that you want to teach on that platform. And this is not being rude or disrespectful, but there's been a lot of disrespect, especially in the comment section. All right. So let's give clarity, family. I'm going to walk you through. When is the beginning of sorrows? And that's why I started with the eschatology. There's so many different eschatologies, and I am not dependent on any of them. Right? I want to make that clear. So when is the beginning of sorrows? I want to start off by saying, listen with intelligence. Let me say this again. Listen with intelligence. Everyone in the chat, just type it inside the chat. Listen with intelligence. We're going to do it all together. We're going to make sure when people come inside this chat, they're going to understand that we are on the same page. So just type in listen with intelligence. Just type that inside the chat. For all those that are on board, One Voice on this platform, we're going to encourage everyone that's even coming in late. Listen with intelligence. I want you guys to remember that thought. Listen with intelligence. We have to learn this. We have to learn this key attribute. We have to embrace this attribute. Listening with intelligence, not just hearing, listening with intelligence. All right, let's keep that thought. Listen with intelligence. If anyone come in trying to disturb or interrupt the room, just post listen with intelligence. That's how you choke out the tares. That's how you choke out the weeds. That's how the true wheat choke out the tares. All right. So listen with intelligence. Well, the Hebrew word for that phrase is shamai. Shamai. Right? Which also transliterates to hearken. Well, let's break this down real quick. Notice what you see here. Shamai. It says to hear intelligently. So that's where I came up with the phrase listen with intelligence. Because Shema also means obedience. It means consider. It means declare. But notice this here. It says discern, give ear, obedient, obey, understand. So family, when we say listen with intelligence, we're saying Shema. In other words, discernment, listen with obedience, because many of us right now in this awakening, we listen with contention, not with the spirit of being obedient, the spirit of obeying, the spirit of, as you see here, give ear. That means you are going to what? Do more listening than talking. You're going to do more watching than talking. All right. So did the beginning of sorrows begin with the destruction of the temple? I have to answer this question. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 24, starting at verse 1 and 2. Let's go back here. And Yahushua went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to shew him the buildings of the temple. Verse 2. And Yahushua said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now let's go to Luke 21, verse 5. We're going to use the principle of the 2 or 3 witnesses. Let's see what it says here. Verse 5. And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts. And he said, this is Yahweh Shai. He said, as for these things which ye behold, the days will come, and the which there shall not be left one stone upon another, that shall not be thrown down. So a key quote that I want to highlight says, some spake of the temple, how it was adorned. We know the disciples were speaking on this, and probably other Israelites were speaking on this too, but we're focusing on the disciples. Now let's go to Josephus, because I want to give some historical aspects of this time frame too, so you guys can really put things in its proper perspective, because I'm going to also identify some of the flaws, some of the issues, some of the errors of some of our brothers and sisters have been institutionalized with their approach to the scriptures. So let's go to Josephus, the Jewish War, chapter 8. Now, look, I know there's some brothers and sisters that don't want to teach or don't want to use Josephus as a point of reference, but he's an historian. He's an Israelite historian from that time period who lived during the destruction of the temple, who lived during the time of Hamashiach. Whether you agree with him, whether you want to call him a sellout or whatever, but that does not take away from him giving an account, some things that we can take from that confirms the scriptures. Here we go. Chapter 8. It reads, Jock Pompey had the city Jerusalem delivered up to him, but took the temple by force. How he went into the Holy of Holies, as also what were his other exploits in Judea. So what I'm reading is what's at the top of the chapter here. All right. Actually, chapter 7. I have down here chapter 8, but it's actually chapter 7. All right. So, but paragraph 4 says this. It reads, now here, it was that upon the many hardships which the Romans underwent, Pompey could not but admire not only at the other instances of the Jewish fortitude, but I like to say Judah's fortitude. I don't like to use this word Jew because that is not an ancient word. That is one of those words, modern words that many have used to backdate, the backdate history and align it with a modern construct. So the other instances in the Greek, the Hebrew word is Yahawadah. Some of you guys would say Yahuda, but the ancient Hebrew is Yahawadah, which transliterate to Judah. So the other instances of Yahawadah, in other words, Judah, fortitude, but especially that they did not at all intermix their religious services, even when they were encompassed with darts on all sides, for as if the city were in full peace. So this is saying that they were still going about their day-to-day business. They were going about their day-to-day business in spite of the siege that they were under. So it says their daily sacrifices and purifications and every branch of their religious worship was still performed to Allahaya. And then we go to chapter 2, right? It's going to give us some additional information. Notice some key information that it gives us, right? It says here how Titus gave orders to demolish the Tower of Antonia. That's what you see, that Wailing Wall that you see over in Israel. That's not the temple. The temple was completely destroyed. That is Fort Antonia. But anyway, how Titus gave orders to demolish the towers of Antonia, and then persuaded Josephus to exhort Judah again to surrender. Now we're going to read paragraph number 1, as we see here. And now Titus gave orders to his soldiers that were with him to dig up the foundations of the Tower of Antonia and make him a ready passage for his army to come up, while he himself had Josephus brought to him. For he had been informed that on the very day, which was the 17th day of Panemus, In other words, Tammuz, the sacrifice called the daily sacrifice, had failed and had not been offered to Elohim. So family, I'm showing you this for a reason. I want to make sure you guys understand this. I'm showing you this for a reason because it's telling us that during the destruction of the temple, the key that it highlighted here, that it placed a point of emphasis on, the daily sacrifice had failed. They give us an account that before the destruction of the temple, before they were able to infiltrate the temple, that Israel was still doing their sacrifices. They were still doing the all the things that came with the territory. They were still doing those things on the holy days. All right. So here's the footnote. And this is what's key here for those that are teaching that this passage, for us, the part of Matthew 24, that it's something that's to come, that it didn't happen, and some actually mixing and meshing it with other things. I'm showing you here exactly what Josephus wrote, independent of the law and the prophets, independent of the good news. So it says here, this was, and this is the footnote, this was a remarkable day, indeed, the 17th of Panemus, and as you see here, footnote, Tammuz, AD 70, when according to Daniel's prediction, 606 years before, the Romans in half a week caused the sacrifice and oblation to cease. And you see what? Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. So Josephus confirms the prophecy of Daniel and its connection to the destruction of the temple. So we see a historian, an Israelite, a Hebrew Israelite historian that is actually confirming the prophecies of Daniel with the destruction of the temple, the destruction of Israel. So Yahweh Shai also clearly states that the beginning of sorrows is connected to Daniel chapter 9:27. The sacking of the temple, but he connects his prophecy. He anchors it with Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. So let's go to that prophecy. Daniel 9, starting at verse 24. It reads, 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation kapar for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, in other words, lawfulness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. And we see Mashach. Let me read that point again. To anoint Mashach, the most holy. Verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem unto the Messiah, Mashiach, the prince, shall be 7 weeks, 62 days. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah, Mashiach, be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come to destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the world, desolations are determined. Let me say that again. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Verse 27. And he shall confirm thy covenant, the covenant, with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation and that determined. So let's continue here. So Yahweh laid out his plan like a sixfold, Yahweh laid out his sixfold plan for Israel. Excuse me for fumbling over my words. The first part of Yahweh's plan is to stop the rebellion or transgression of Israel. I'm breaking down this prophecy of Daniel that we just read real quick. The second part of Yahweh's plan is to put an end to sin. Okay. The third part of Yahweh's plan is to atone for all wickedness, making reconciliation between Yahweh and Israel, Yahweh and man possible. The fourth part of Yahweh's plan is to establish an everlasting righteousness on the earth. In other words, lawfulness. So let's go here to back to verse 24. We're going to slow walk this here. 7 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint Mashach, the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore, to rebuild Jerusalem unto the Messiah, Mashiach, the prince shall be 7 weeks, 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, the wall even in troublous times. So the fifth part of Yahweh's prophecy is to fulfill all his prophecies. Let me say that again. The fifth part of Yahweh's plan is to fulfill all his prophecies. The sixth part of Yahweh's plan is to anoint the most holy. The 490 years are divided into 3 periods. All right. I'm going geek mode, family. Listen with intelligence. I'm going geek mode. All right. So the 490 years are divided into 3 periods. The first period of Yahweh's plan is 7 sevens, which equals 49 years. Let's deal with this period real quick. The first period. The starting point of this particular period was the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. And the end of the period is the completion of the capital city. The complete rebuilding of Jerusalem was to take 49 years. So Yahweh was revealing that the Israelites would be set free from the Babylonian captivity and would return home to rebuild their nation and their beloved capital, Jerusalem. So the second part of the period, right? The second period, rather, Yahweh's plan was the 7 plus 62 sevens, which equals 483 years. Let me say that again. The second period of Yahweh's plan was 7 sevens plus 62 sevens, which equals 483 years. All right, let's break this down. Verse 26. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So the period would bring about the cutting off or death of Yahweh Shai, Hamashiach. Hamashiach would not die for himself, which strongly suggests that he would be dying for others. Although it would seem as though he accomplished nothing when he died, he would be accomplishing everything for those who truly place their trust in him. The second period would be followed by 2 significant events. Let's break this down. The first, the Romans would destroy Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD, and second century war of desolation would take place on the earth. Let me say that again. The first, the Romans would destroy Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD. And the second centuries of wars and desolation would take place on the earth. We're going to break this down here. And the third period of Yahweh's plan was 1 7, which equals 7 years. We're going to break this down. We're breaking it down now, but I'm going geek mode. I'm going to go a little more in depth with this. Here we go. The third period of Yahweh's plan will complete his purpose for his people. The 6 wonderful blessings of this verse, in other words, 24, will be completely fulfilled at the end of the third period. The 7 years will come. The 7 years will be a time of terrifying tribulation under the rule of the son of perdition. Right. So let's break all of this down, family. Let's break all of this down, because I really need to give some clarity here. because we got to make sure we understand the son of perdition too. And we want to get there. Actually, I'm going to touch more on that in the second lesson, which would be the Great Tribulation, because there's a lot to unpack here. A lot to unpack. Matthew 24, verse 14 and 15. I want to skip down to here. In this good news, in other words, this is where many would use the word gospel, of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. Let me say this again, family. This is some key information. And this good news, in other words, the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken by who? Daniel. So Christ makes it clear what we just covered. Christ is saying that this times of sorrow, or the beginning of sorrows, is anchored with Daniel's prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem. That's why I want to make sure you guys understand here. Christ gave these words. He made it clear. It says here, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, stand in the holy place. Now, we're going to give some key nuggets here to further prove that this is dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem. This is not a prophecy of today. We have to understand, family, not every prophecy you read is going to be fulfilled today, because it was already fulfilled. This prophecy was already fulfilled. And part of the problem is many are taking bits and pieces and cherry picking and forming something that's not even biblically sound. It doesn't make any biblical sense when you really start understanding and walking through the text like we are doing. So when ye therefore shall see the abominations of desolation spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. That's the part. Let me say that again. Remember what we said, listen with intelligence? So Christ is telling his disciples to listen with intelligence. But look at what he says here. When ye therefore shall see the abominations of desolation spoken of by Daniel, the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. So we have so many people that are reading, but they don't have understanding. We have so many people that are reading, but they are not listening with intelligence, because Christ is telling his disciples here, when ye therefore see the abomination of the desolations, hey, when you start seeing the temple being destroyed, as spoken of by the prophet, Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, and whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Come on, family, we're going in. Again, he says, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. That's what Christ said to his disciples. Let's go. Now we're going to go back to verse 5 through 8. I know I skipped up, but I wanted to go. I did that for a reason. So you understand, Christ is dealing with Daniel. He's dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem in this portion of the prophecy. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach. Well, what does Mashiach means? It simply means anointed. That's a buzzword of today's time that we live in, especially if you come up in a Baptist church, or more specifically, the Pentecostal church, because they're good to throw around that word anointed. You hear that thrown around in the so-called non-denominational churches. Anointed. Oh, such and such has such an anointing. Pastor have such an anointing. That's what Christ is saying. They may not say Christ, they may not say Messiah, but they're using a word that's synonymous with Messiah and Christ. That is the word anointed. So for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Mashiach. Name, Hashem, reputation, glory, fame, character. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am anointed. I am Mashiach. I am Christ. And shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Let's break this down. Verse 7, for nations shall rise against nations. Now we're dealing with the internal squabbles of Israel. I'm going to prove that here. For nations shall rise against nations, kingdoms against kingdoms, and there shall be famines, pestilence, earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Bara makabai, or bara'ah maka'abai. All right? Let's break this down. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Let's break down sorrows. Let's break down sorrows. It says here, anguish, affliction, grief, pain. All these are the beginning of what? Anguish, affliction, grief, pain. And we break down this word, this Greek word, we see the word odin. This is what you see in your transliteration. Odin. Odin. Right? Now, peep this out. Odin. The Greek word odin means pain, sorrow, travail. But we see entry number 2, it says intolerable anguish. Intolerable anguish in reference to the dire calamities precede the advent of the Messiah. So we see that word odin, and it says, look at what it says, transliterated Odin, pronounced Odin. Now, this is a refresher from a week ago when I went in about dealing with the end of the world. I dealt with a lot of other stuff. So that's why I'm doing this separate teaching. So that way, this will be dedicated strictly for the time of sorrows, or the beginning of sorrows. So let's deal with this word Odin, right? So the Greek word for sorrow is Odin, or Odin. And remember, I connected the dots right here. Odin means Norse all-father, called God of the hanged, because the trees of his sacred groves at Uppsala were laden with hanged human sacrifices, even as late as the 10th century. Each victim's drama, in other words, drama, recapitulated the death rebirth of Odin himself when he acquired his divine powers by giving himself up to immolation on the world tree. Christmas tree, the worship of the tree worship. Wounded in his side with a spear. Doesn't it sound familiar? Doesn't it sound like the things that the Romans did to Hamashiach? They did this to pay homage to who? Odin, right? Affliction, to what? Bring forth drama, anguish. We identified that in the definition I gave here, right? Let's go back here so that way you guys are following me here. Let's go back here. Look at what it says. Intolerable anguish in reference to the dire calamities precede the advent of the Messiah. So make a note here. Intolerable anguish, right? So when we go back over to what we're dealing with Odin right now, it says here, look at what it says. Each victim's drama recapitulated their death, rebirth of Odin himself when he acquired his divine powers by giving himself up to immolation on the world tree. Wounded in the side with a spear, he said, I know that I hung on the windy tree for 9 whole nights, wounded with the spear dedicated to Odin, myself to myself. So they pierced, the Romans pierced Hamashiach in his side with what, according to them, would be their spear dedicated to Odin. Come on, family. I'm breaking this thing down here. And I'm actually, all of this is going to be placed inside a book. I'm working on that right now. And I'm doing a special video for this right here. So prayerfully, I can get the book done over the next couple of months. But I've been working on this for a little while, right? So again, this is paying homage to Odin. That spear represents that spear that was dedicated to the Romans deity, Odin, right? Which means myself to myself. So let's go to verse 9 here. Let's go to verse 9. Then shall they deliver you up. Now we're going to further pay attention and cement this whole prophecy to the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. Remember also, shortly after, the wars that transpired after the sacking of Jerusalem. But we're dealing with that period. And notice this portion of this prophecy we see here. This is dealing with the disciples. This portion of the prophecy is dealing with the disciples. It's dealing with Israel of their time. See, when it says, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, he's dealing with his disciples, because remember, this whole conversation is Christ with his disciples. Christ said that the whole area was going to be decimated. The disciples came to him and asked him a question privately. So this is the conversation that they're having. This is what Christ is giving them, the answer to their questions. He says, then shall they deliver you? He's pointing to his disciples in that private conversation. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. So let's confirm this with Luke chapter 21, verse 12. 2 or 3 witnesses, right? Let's go over here. Look at what it says. But before all these, still dealing with this same conversation. Luke is giving an account of that same conversation. But before all these, they shall lay hands on you and persecute who? You. This is dealing with the disciples. This is dealing with those that are following Hamashiach of that time. This is not dealing with today. This is not a prophecy of today. This is dealing with the destruction of Jerusalem. This is a private conversation that Christ is having with his disciples. He's saying to his disciples, but before all these, they shall lay hands on you, persecute you, disciples that are skilled in learning, delivering you up to the synagogues, mashkan, and into prison, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. So the time of sorrows occurred during the lifetime of the disciples. Let me say that again. Sorrows occurred during the lifetime of the disciples. Let's go to John 16 to confirm this. Let's go to John 16 to confirm this. Look at what it says. This is Christ having this conversation with his disciples. Look at what it says. These things have I spoken unto you. Who's the you? His disciples. These things have I spoken you out of these synagogues. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth Yahweh service. Verse 3, and these things will they do unto you. Remember, he's dealing with his disciples. He's not dealing with anyone else. He's not dealing with the church. He's not told you, still dealing with his disciples, that when the time shall come, ye may remember that I told, said not unto you. Any plainer than this. Let me fix here. It looks like StreamYard trying to act up. All right. StreamYard trying to act a little crazy here. Cray. Go figure when you're doing certain teachings like this. All right. All right. And family, let me know if things start acting a little crazy here. All right. Matter of fact, let me open up another browser real quick. See, this is what happens. This is what YouTube does for some reason when you're teaching this truth. So what I'm going to do, family, I'm going to open up another browser just to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Bear with me 1 second and we'll continue right where we are. Let me open up this browser. All right, bear with me 1 second. All right, what's going to happen is I'm going to kick myself out of one browser to open up another. All right. So it's going to appear that I'm going to go out. Matter of fact, let me do this real quick. All right, family. I just wanted to switch browsers just to make sure that we don't get interrupted again. Because when I see that pattern, I know that YouTube may try to close me out here. So let me make sure that doesn't happen again. Bear with me 1 second. Let me close a couple of more things out. All right. Let me close. Did I go on the right one? You know what? I think I went back into the wrong one. Let me make sure. Yeah, let me do it one more time, family. Let me close out this one here. I went into the wrong one. Let me do it one more time. All right. Quick test, family. I just want to switch over to my browser. We should be good now. I want to switch over to another browser. Just type 1 if everything is clear. And my apologies for the short delay here, but I just want to make sure that we don't experience any outages. All right. If you guys can hear me clearly, type 1. If you can hear me clearly, type 1. Great, great. Let me close out some of this stuff here. All right. Let me close out some of this stuff. I got all kinds of stuff open here. All right. There we go. There we go. I just want to, again, close out some of the browsers that I had open and close out the browser that I was in. All right. So let's go back here. Let's start back with John 16. Verse 1. Let's double back a little bit just to make sure we're on the same page. Before we continue, let me give a couple of shout outs here. We have Elder in the building. I'm looking forward to your book. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you for the love and support holding things down in California. Get with me offline, Elder, so that way we can get you out here for one of our the upcoming Passover. I really want to get you out here. Really appreciate it. And family, I will be posting early about the Passover for all those that are interested in celebrating Passover with us and moving forward. I got some other things to allow some of you guys to be connected with our local ministry here because I've been really kind of keeping that at a distance until, I want to get to a certain place till the Most High gave the okay to start really opening up our doors. But with that being said, we'll discuss that another time. But thank you again, Elder, for the love and support. Really appreciate you. Also want to give a shout out to Amelia Israel. the Holy Spirit is in this teaching. All praises to the Most High. Thank you for being the vessel that has blessed us with this teaching. Thank you for the love and support. Really appreciate you. Really appreciate it. Thank you, sis. Really appreciate the love and support. Thank you for the contribution tonight. Also, Tangi Ya, Black to My Roots. I can't wait for your book. Thou will die for all you do, Pastor Kelly. We love, respect, and appreciate you. Really appreciate you as well. Thank you for the love and support here. Thank you. And family, let's show some love to everyone that is that have given a contribution tonight. And family, I really appreciate all you guys, and all your contributions is helping me be able to do what I do. You know, had it not been for you guys, I'd just be taking a walk by myself. So thank the Most High for each and every one of you. So I have a few projects that I'm working on right now to really put everything within a not just one book, but multiple books. And not just that, some other things that we can have, that we could say you have a source that really you could go to really unpack some of the things that you have questions on as you make that have made that transition out of the church to where you are right now. All right. So really appreciate you guys. Let's get back into it. Thank you guys again. All right. So let's rewind this a little bit. Let's go to the beginning of this verses so that way we can put things back into its proper perspective like we were doing before we got interrupted. Now, again, this verse further confirms we are dealing with Christ, the time of Christ. We're dealing with the disciples. This conversation is a private conversation. Christ is telling his disciples what's going to happen to them during this time of affliction. These things have I spoken unto you, disciples, that ye should not be offended, disciples. They remember, no teacher, no servant is greater than his what? Adonai, right? Which transliterates to master, but we will say superintendent of the house, because I don't like that term master because of the origins of that word. The proper context will be superintendent of the house. These things have I spoken unto you, that ye should not be offended, that they shall put you out of the synagogues. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth Yahweh's service. Verse 3, these things will they do unto who? You, disciples, because they have not known the Father nor know me. It's telling you about the deception, the delusion of our own brothers and sisters. But these things have I told you, that when the time shall come, ye may remember that I told you of them. These things I said unto you at the beginning, because I was with you. Guess what, family? This is Christ is prophesying the afflictions that the disciples will have to go through during this period, along with the destruction of Jerusalem. Look at what he says. Let's deal with the death of the disciples real quick. I'm proving this here right along with the prophecies of Daniel. And Christ again anchored the times of sorrows with the beginning of sorrows with the prophecies of Daniel. The death of the disciples. You guys remember, this is a refresher to some of you guys. Are there scriptures that give an actual account of the death of the apostles? Well, we go to Acts chapter 12, starting at verse 1. Look at this. Now about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And actually, let's go back here. It's not the church. It's actually the assembly, the assembled witnesses of the Israelites. Let me correct myself. I got to correct this slide and make sure we put the proper words here, because we're not dealing with the church. And this is how we get programmed with those charms and spell casting, because they place these words, and by the repetition of saying these words, guess what? They further push the spell of pushing the theologies, these replacement theologies, the doctrines that is completely contrary to the scriptures. So at this time, who's being persecuted? The blood descendants of Israel, who is following the Messiah. Look at what it says here. Now about that time, Herod, the king, stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the called out assembly of witnesses, the Israelites. Now, let me say it in Hebrew. Ha kal kwahal ha adav yashara'al. In the In the Greek, it would be ecclesia, which means called out assembly, the Israelites. So this has nothing to do with this generic construct. All right. So, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And because he saw it pleased Judah, Yahweh, he, look at here. So we're not dealing with Christianity. We are not dealing with Catholicism. We're dealing with their ancestors, their relatives, the Romans, but we are not dealing with the church as what we've been institutionalized to believing and thinking. It says, and because he saw it pleased who? Judah, just like it pleased Judah when Christ was being crucified, being lynched in front of Pilate. Then were the days of the unleavened bread. So this is around the time of the feast days. All right. So let's go to Eusebius of Caesarea, Ecclesiastical History. Let's see what he says. See, family, we can use some of the second and third sources, right? Secondary sources, because they bear witness to what we're pointing out here from history. I'm just taking this from history, right? Now let's see what he says. The Apostle of John, in the Apocalypse, it is said that in this persecution, the Apostle and Evangelist John, who was still alive, was condemned to dwell on the island of Patmos in the Word. Look at this. Listen to a tale, which is not a mere tale. In other words, this is not a fable. This is truth. This is but a narrative concerning John the Apostle, which has been handed down and treasured up in memory. Now we're dealing with oral. It says it's been passed down orally. For when after the tyrant's death, he returned from the Isle of Patmos to Ephesus, he went away upon the invitation of the neighboring territories of the Gentiles. Right. And now let's go. And I'm going to toggle between Eusebius and Tertullian because they line up, but I'm making sure that I stay in a certain timeline. So you're going to see me toggle back between the two of them. All right. So the complete works of Tertullian, 155 AD. It says here, Peter endures a passion like his Adonai, in other words, Christ, Hamashiach, where Paul wins his crown in a death like John, where the Apostle John was first plunged unhurt into boiling oil and thence remitted to his island exile. All right. And look at what it says. It says, see what she has learned, what taught, what fellowship has had even our churches in Africa or assemblies in Africa. Bear with me 1 second. I want to make sure my mic is set. I just thought about it. I want to make sure the right. Okay, good. Wanted to make sure my mic was set correctly. All right. So it says, see what she has learned. And let me move my mouse over here. See what she has learned, what taught, what fellowship has had with even our assemblies, called out assemblies in Africa. Assemblies of who? Israelites. There were Israelite assemblies in Africa. Israel is in Africa, Northeast Africa, which is now called the Middle East. Anyway, so let's go back to Eusebius of Caesarea. Ecclesiastical History. Let's see what it says. Domitian exiled John. Let's deal with the Domitian real quick. The persecution under Domitian. So this is still dealing with the prophecies as we highlighted in Daniel. The destruction of Jerusalem in what? That whole period, like the 1st century, 2nd century, those wars that we were subjected to. But anyway, Domitian, having shown great cruelty toward many and having unjustly put to death no small number of well-born and noble men at Rome, and having without cause exiled and confiscated the property of a great many other illustrious men, finally became a successor of Nero, and his hatred and enmity toward Elohim. He was in fact the second that stirred up a persecution against us, although his father Vespasian had undertaken nothing prejudicial to us. Excuse me for butchering the word. So let's go back over to Tertullian. Remember, we toggling between the two, so that way we get a complete picture of what happened to the disciples in these secondary sources. All right, we had the primary source, but we confirming this in secondary sources. Peter is struck that Stephen is overwhelmed by stones. We see that in the book of Acts. James is slain. We highlighted that in the book of Acts. James is slain as is a victim at the altar. Paul is beheaded, has been written in their own blood. And if a heretic wishes his confidence to rest upon a public record, the archives of the empire will speak as would the stones of Jerusalem. We read the lives of the Caesars at Rome. Nero was the first who stained with blood. Excuse me. Let me read that again. At Rome, Nero was the first who stained the blood, the rising faith. Then is Peter girt by another when he is made fast to the cross or to the tree. All right. So let's toggle back over to Eusebius here. We're still giving an account of the disciples, what Christ, Hamashiach, prophesied, thus publicly announcing himself as the first among Allahim's chief enemies. He was led to the slaughter of the apostles. It is therefore recorded that Paul was beheaded in Rome itself, and that Peter likewise was crucified under Nero. This account of Peter and Paul is substantiated by the fact that their names are preserved, right, in the cemeteries of that place, even to the present day. So this is making an account that there is a location of Peter, a location of Paul, and said, and their names are preserved in the cemeteries of that place, even to the present day. Okay, so let's confirm this with Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 23. This prophetic law about what? Being hung on a tree. Because they all were hanged. They were tortured. His body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt in any wise bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of Allahim, that thy land be not defiled, which Yahweh Allahim giveth thee for an inheritance. So guess what, family? The beginning of sorrows is actually the time of Odin. Let me say that again. The beginning of sorrows is actually the time of Odin. The beginning of the time of Odin, the time of the Gentiles. In other words, the other nations like the Romans, the time of the Gentiles is actually the time of Odin. In other words, the time that they're going to afflict Yahweh's people, right? Let's break this down. The transatlantic slave trade, which was actually a world war, is actually the time of Odin. Right? That's still part of the afflictions. And I'm going to break this down to give clarity. Don't want to confuse you guys. Remember this from the last time we did this live, right? Some of this is a refresher, but look at this. Remember some of these images here. These are times of Odin. Remember, Odin hung people on a tree, hung his victims on a tree to do what? To bring forth drama. Pierced Christ in the side, right? Hung him, right? Excruciating pain. So look at this. This is real, family. These are real images. This is a mother who got hung right along with her son, who was like 13 years old, who she had to watch over 40 men rape and sodomize her son for being accused for stealing food to eat. Right here, yes, bounty, $2 for a dozen of. Look at the ears for the negus, Negus, ears. That's right. They were eating our ancestors. Remember that movie? I think it was an old movie with Sean Van Damme when it was like a Vietnam movie. Like I think it was like some type of soldier, whereas though they were like invincible soldiers or something like that. And one of the soldiers went crazy and made a necklace out of ears. Come on, family. That stuff is real. That's what they were doing to our people. Look at this. This is a fire escape. This is in the city. Man, they had lynchings in New York City. They had lynchings in Chicago. They had lynchings in Newark, New Jersey. They had lynchings in Detroit, Michigan. They had even like these, like public beatings. Forgot what they call the site. But look at this. This is them hanging from a fire escape. All right. Here's some additional times of affliction. These are public places. Look at these are street lights, the same street lights that we were told that we need to be in before they came on. Why did our parents tell us to be home before the street lights? Because this is what would happen to us. It was the chances of something like this back during their time. If they're out before the street lights, before it gets dark and these street lights come on, there was no guarantee for them to make it home. Come on, family. Look at this. These are real images, family, being treated like game right here. Look at this. Treated like game. He was raped here. That's why a lot of the people that you'll see that were being lynched, you'll see that their pants were hanging down. Most of the time it's down at their ankles because they were sodomized. They were raped, mutilated. Look at this. See that street light? Another railroad tracks. See that street light? That's why we had to be home before what? The street lights came on. That's where this all comes from. It's not just happenstance, family. All right. These are a time of sorrows. Time of Odin. Inflicting drama. Inflicting drama. These are trees. Inflicting drama. And no, lynching didn't just occur in the United States. This occurred over in Spain. This occurred over in Britain. This occurred in the UK, family. Just want to be clear about that. This is a postcard that would be sent out. Look at, just so that way you guys can see here. Let me zoom it in. Postcard. Place stamp here. So this was being sent out. Look at this. This is the barbecue we had last night. Wait a minute. They had a barbecue. This is the true tense of a picnic. Look at it. I'm not making this up, family. Let me zoom it up here. Look at this. This is the barbecue we had last night. My picture is to the left with a cross over it, your son, Joe. So this is a son right here. This is a son sending this picture of cooking this Negro here. You see how they chopped up some of his body parts because they were eating him. They were taking souvenirs. But this went through the postal service. This went through the governmental system legally. This tells you the state of how the country were during that time. So the lynching period is actually the time of Odin. Each victim's drama recapitulated the death, rebirth of Odin himself. What group of people have the history of fearing to be hanged on a tree? What group of people? What group of people have always had the fear of being hanged on a tree? And when you study the sacking of Jerusalem, man, they were hanging out ancestors all through the roads that led into Jerusalem. The Messiah was lynched. The disciples were lynched. The Israelites was and continue to be lynched. The etymological dictionary definition of lynch, look at this. Inflict severe bodily punishment without legal sanction. We know it was deliberate. It was deliberately fatal. See how they try to dumb it down? Not deliberately fatal. No, the intention was to inflict excruciating pain. At the conclusion of it, murder us. All right, let's fast forward. I'm just going fast forward a little bit. As you see here, the narrowing of the meaning to extra-legal execution by hanging is evident by the 1880s after the 1893 lynching mostly meant killing. Look at this. Mostly meant killings of blacks by white mobs, especially in retaliation for alleged sexual assault of white women. All right, here's another example here. I'm not going to go to the details. Remember that postcard of the person that's being burnt to death, right? These are some articles here, right? Dealing with Sam Holt. Kissimmee Valley Gazette, April 28, 1899, Sam Holt burned at the stake. Springfield, Massachusetts, Weekly Republican, 1899, Negro burnt alive in Florida, second Negro then hanged, right? This is all dealing with the lynching period. Before the torch was applied to the papyri, the Negro was deprived of his ears, fingers, genital parts of his body. These are all rituals, family, satanic rituals. Cannibalism. He pleaded pitifully for his life while the mutilation was going on, but stood the ordeal of fire with surprising fortitude. Before the body was cooled, it was cut to pieces, the bones were crushed into small bits, and even the tree upon which the wretch met his fate was torn up and disposed as souvenirs. The Negro's heart was cut into several pieces, as was also the liver. Those unable to obtain the ghastly relics, direct paid their more fortunate possessors extravagant sums for them. Small pieces of bones went for 25 cents. A bit of the liver crisply cooked sold for 10 cents. As soon as the Negro was seen to be dead, there was a tremendous struggle, like Black Friday, struggle among the crowd, which had witnessed his tragic end, to secure the souvenirs. Sound like Black Friday, right? A rush was made for the stake, and those near the body were forced against it and had to fight for their freedom. Knives were quickly produced, and soon the body was dismembered. So even upon the tree which the wretch met his fate was torn up and disposed of as souvenirs. So the conclusion of the drama of Sam Holt was his body was cut up into pieces and sold as souvenirs. Let's go back to John chapter 19, right? Go back to John. Let's go to chapter 19. Look at what it says about Christ. The soldiers, when they had crucified Yahushua, took his garments, made 4 parts, to every soldier a part, and also his coat. Now the coat without seam, woven from the top throughout. They said, therefore, among themselves, let us not rend it, but cast lots for it, whose it shall be, that the scripture might be fulfilled, which saith, they parted my raiment, among them, and for my vesture they did cast lots. These things, therefore, the soldiers did. Come on, family. Let's confirm this prophecy. The 22nd book of Psalms, verse 16. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I may tell all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garments among them and cast lots upon my vesture. This is giving you, family, more clarity. This is confirming the word, right? So is the lynching period the time of sorrows, a time of Odin? So is the lynching period the time of sorrows, a time of Odin? I'm going to answer this question. No. Let me explain. The lynching period, which never stopped, is a time of sorrows, a period of affliction for our people, but not the one the Messiah explained to his disciples. Let me say that again. This is not the same as what the Messiah explained to his disciples. Remember, the key is Daniel, the sacking of Jerusalem. We proved that. All right. So let's go back to Matthew. Let's start at verse 9. I know we've been jumping back and forth, but this to give you clarity. So look at what it says. Going back here, further prove that we're dealing with the disciples. We're dealing with the sacking of Jerusalem, and Christ is telling his disciples, he's warning them, he's telling them what they need to do, and those that are connected to them. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted. We already proved that with some of the sources we shared, Tertullian and also Eusebius. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake, and then shall be offended And then shall many be offended and betray one another and shall hate one another. Now, this is another thing that really got me right here. This is deep right here. And I'm going to give you some history from Josephus confirming this. Then shall many be offended and shall betray one another. Both survival and selfishness are seen in the last days of Jerusalem when Titus besieged the city. The wealthy focused on themselves and neglected the poor, and the powerful took what they wanted. As the siege wore on, famine and pestilence struck, right? It became a dog-eat-dog world for the Israelites. The strong took from the weak, and the weak revealed his neighbor's hidden supplies, no matter how little, in order to receive a morsel from the strong. Within the walls of the city, this is Jerusalem, betrayal and murder ran rampant in order to survive. Others just outrightly betrayed their nation and went over to the side of the Romans in order to save their lives, selling their own people out. This is now what we call sedition. What is sedition? What is sedition? Rebellion, uprising, revolt, concert attempt to overthrow civil authority, violent strife between factions, civil or religious disorder, riot, rebelliousness against authority, civil disorder, dissension, strife, rebellion, mutiny, a going apart, separation, right? A going from. So this is the things that Israel was dealing with at that time. It was bad. Now, Josephus is going to confirm this. Let's see what Josephus says about the very things that Christ prophesied. Let's see what Josephus says. Listen to how he gives an account, just what Christ prophesied about, just what Daniel prophesied about, just what he warned his disciples about. Let's see what Josephus says. Look at this. As Josephus was speaking thus with a loud voice, the seditious would neither yield to what he said, nor did they deem it safe for them to alter their conduct. But as for the people, they had a great inclination to desert to the Romans accordingly. In other words, you had Israelites selling their own people out, crossing the line. Some of them sold what they had, and even the most precious things that had been laid up as treasures by them. In other words, they go into the pawn shop, they pawning everything for every small matter, and swallowed down pieces of gold. So now they're swallowing precious jewelry. Look at here, that they might not be found out by robbers. And when they had escaped to the Romans, went to stool. In other words, they earled it back up. And it says, and had wherewithal to provide plentiful for themselves. This tells you just how bad it was, that they had precious jewelry. They would swallow their rings and stuff like that. So that way the robbers couldn't steal it from them. They wouldn't even see it on them. So when they escaped to Rome, they would now spit them back up, and then pawn them once they get into Rome. That's what this is saying. But as for the richer sort, it proved all one to them, whether they stayed in the city or attempted to get out of it, for they were equally destroyed in both cases. For every such person was put to death under the pretense that they were going to desert, but in reality, that the robbers might get what they had. The madness of the sedition, right, did also increase together with their famine. That's right, family. The other part too, I didn't point out too, that they was taking a mean one. All right. I just want to I'm trying to keep it clean here. Like back home, we would say they were taking a mean one. Some would earl, but others would do what? Take a mean one. So they was taking a earl, but they was also what? Taking a mean one. The number two, if you guys know what I mean. All right. So sedition did also increase together with their famine, and both of those miseries were every day inflamed more and more. For there was no corn which anywhere appeared publicly, right? Anywhere public, they did not see corn, But the robbers came running into and searched men's private houses. And then if they found any, they tormented them because they had denied they had any. And if they found none, they tormented them worse because they supposed they had more carefully concealed it. All right. People, I just want to say this, brothers and sisters, because we headed into another period, and I'm not going to teach you on it tonight. And this is not related to the Great Tribulation, but we are headed into another period that I'm going to highlight in a special teaching, but not tonight. Desperate times, people do desperate things. That's what we're being proved. That's what's being proven here. Desperate times, people do desperate things. And Christ was warning his disciples about how desperate things were going to be during the destruction of Jerusalem. Look at what Josephus says here. It was now a miserable case and a sight that would justly bring tears into our eyes, how men stood as to their food, while the more powerful had more than enough, and the weaker were lamenting for want of it. But the famine was too hard for all other passions, and it is destructive to nothing so much as to modesty, for what was otherwise worthy of reverence was in this case despised, insomuch that children pulled the very morsels. In other words, the children are pulling food out of their fathers' mouths as they were eating. Look at this here. The children pulled the very morsels that their fathers were eating out of their very mouths. And what was still more to be pitied, so did the mothers do as to their infants. And when those that were most dear were perishing under their hands, they were not ashamed to take from them the very last drops that might preserve their lives. And while they ate after this manner, yet were they not concealed in doing so, but the seditious everywhere came upon them immediately and snatched away from them what they had gotten from others when they saw any house shut up. This was to them a signal that the people within had gotten some food, whereupon they broke open the doors, ran in, took pieces of what they were eating almost up out of their very throats. And this by force. The old men who had had their food fast were beaten, and the women hid what they had within their hands. Their hair was torn for doing so, nor was there any commiseration shown either to the aged or to the infants. No compassion shown for the elders or for the young people, the toddlers, the babes. But they lifted up children from the ground as they hung upon the morsels they had gotten and shook down upon the floor. So they were even shaking children, getting food out of children, getting food out of shaking down senior citizens, family. Desperate times, people were doing desperate things. After all these things, family, guess what? It gets worse. That's why Christ gave them the disciples a stern warning. He said it gets worse. After all what I read to you, I know some of you guys are probably saying, how can it get any worse than what we read? Matthew 11 through 14. Instead of getting words of comfort from the leadership, instead of getting words of comfort from those that they expected, like the prophets and teachers, the teachers, instead of helping the situation, they added further insult to the situation. They made it even worse. I know some of you guys saying, how can it get even worse? Peep this out. Verse 11. And many false prophets, and see how Josephus, his words are lining right up with Hamashiach's prophecies. Josephus giving details. I'm giving you the details. It's like I'm being the news reporter, reporting the report as the story is coming to me, and I'm confirming it with you guys. And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many. And because iniquity, in other words, lawlessness, bending and twisting the law, statutes, and commands. And because lawlessness shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. In other words, heartless, ruthless. But he that shall endure to the end, unto the end, the same shall be saved. See, this is dealing with the proper context of that scripture. You know, many quoted, he that endured to the end shall be saved. Guess what, family? That applied to the time of sorrows. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. What is a prophet? Real quick, what is a prophet? A prophet is someone who's, according to, excuse me, I'm clearing my throat, someone inspired, in other words, inspired person, inspired by who? The Most High through his Holy Spirit to speak, thus saith Yahweh, through his word. So when we look at the etymological dictionary of a prophet, it says person who speaks from Alahayim, an interpreter, a spokesman, inspired preacher or teacher. Then we look at the Oxford Dictionary definition of this. A person regarded as an inspired teacher or proclaimer of the will of Alahayim. So what does it mean to prophesy real quick? Look at this. To prophesy, an example, speak or sing by inspiration. Inspiration by who? The Most High, through his Spirit. So Christ said many false prophets shall rise. They shall rise. Let's break this down. The false prophets, Nabai Shakar, will claim to preach and teach the message of Yahweh. Jerusalem. At that time, Jerusalem is facing the crisis of its last days. Jerusalem, the times of the disciples, during that time, now they're dealing with their world as they know it is coming to an end. Jerusalem, Yara Shalom, facing the crisis of its last days, experienced a great number of false prophets arising, and each had its own message about how the people could be saved. Doesn't that sound familiar? That sound like today, right? Sound like what we see today. So listen to what Josephus bear witness to what Christ said about the times of sorrow. Now there was then a great number of false prophets suborned by the tyrants to impose on the people, who denounced this to them, that they should wait for deliverance from Alahayim, and this might be in order to keep them from deserting, and that they might be buoyed up above fear and care by such hopes. Now, a man in its adversities does easily compel with such promises, for when such a seducer makes him believe that he shall be delivered from those miseries which oppress him, then it is that the patient is full of hopes of such deliverance, of his deliverance. Now I'm going to show you how this ties into Christ, because these false leaders, these false prophets, are teaching the people, giving them words of them to stay in certain positions or go to certain places so they can take advantage of them. Let's continue. Thus were the miserable people persuaded by these deceivers, these false prophets, and such as believed Alahayim or Yahweh himself, while they did not attend nor give credit to the signs that were so evident, and did so plainly foretell their future desolation. But like men infatuated, without either eyes to see or minds to consider, did not regard the denunciations that Alahayim made to them. Thus there was a star resembling a sword, which stood over the city. Come on, family. Now they're getting a sign, a star over the city in the form of a sword. Thus there was a star resembling a sword which stood over the city, and a comet that continued a whole year. Thus before Judah's rebellion and before those commotions which precede the war, when the people would come in great crowds to the feast of unleavened bread. Oh my gosh, family, do you see what's happening here? They had a star setting over them for a whole year, giving them signs, giving them warnings, giving them proof, giving them evidence of what was going to come. Said the star looked like a sword. A judgment was coming, but the people, because of the false prophets, being misled. See, a false prophet or prophetess is one who develops his own way, their own truth, their own, it says, my notes here, in life for people to follow rather than follow them, rather than follow Yahweh Shai as the way, the truth, and the life. Let me say that again. These false prophets, right? A false prophet, Nabai or Nabaya, Shakar, is one who develops his own way. And we see that right now. So many are developing their own ways, changing dates. I mean, doing all kinds of crazy things, right? And you guys witnessing it, but many of these people, many of our people, because of deception, is caught right up in it. I mean, people that call themselves prophets has no works, constantly moving the goalposts to justify what? Being wrong. A false prophet is one who develops his own way, develops their own truth and life for people to follow them rather than to follow Yahweh Shai as the way, the truth, and the life. So Israel has always had its false prophets. In other words, Nabaya, Shakar, or Shakar, teachers who presented what they wish instead of what exactly said the Most High, or the Most High said. We see that all the time. There are several reasons why a person is deceived. Here's the reasons. False teachers are both within and without, within and outside the church, within the awakening and outside of the awakening. They shall increase as the last days of the world approaches. That's what we see this happening. So false teachers are going to be within the assemblies and outside the assemblies. And I didn't get a chance. I got to correct this slide here, put my formatting and all. But nevertheless, a person's frantic hope for deliverance causes he or she to search for a savior and to grasp at almost anyone who appears on the scene. That's why you see so many prospering off this flea doctrine. Because guess what? It has nothing to do with trying to help people. It's to help themselves. Whether it's to flee the country, whether it's to flee the city, whether it's to go to one of these compounds, plantations here in the United States. That's what it's all about. The humanistic desire to better and strengthen oneself and to impose and controls one's destiny causes a person to look to leaders who offer hope in a better world. The evidence of signs and wonders, powers, reasonableness, logic, knowledge, and help causes a person to follow leaders who demonstrate unusual abilities. That's how they get caught out there. It appears that they're doing what? When I say unusual abilities, signs and wonders. That's what Christ said, that they'll do what? Signs and wonders. They'll do signs and great wonders, hustling the people. Right? Let's go to verse 11. We're getting there. We're almost done here. Let's go to verse 11 through 13. Many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many, because iniquity shall abound. The love of many shall wax cold, but he that shall endure to the end, the same shall be saved. Right? So again, lawlessness, right? Sin and wickedness is always present, but there are times when it seems to multiply and overflow. The Hebrew definition of iniquity, look at what it means. Anomia, it says violation of law, wickedness, transgression of the law, violation of the law. Additional proof, the time of sorrows occurred during the lifetime of the disciples. Here's some additional proof. So again, this is a time of lawfulness. And guess what, family? The church is teaching lawfulness. That in itself is a red flag. That is workers of iniquity. That is the very thing Hamashiach talked about in Matthew chapter 7. Anyway, additional proof the time of sorrow occurred during the lifetime of the disciples. I already highlighted this. This is a duplicate slide. You guys already know this. I'm not going to read this again. But John 16, verse 1 through 4, the Messiah reminded his disciples that they would have help in the midst of the time of sorrows, because he said he would send them a comforter. So matter of fact, that concludes it. That ends it right there. You know what? I could take those last couple of slides off. Let me do it real quick. And family, that's the entire presentation. That's the entire presentation for tonight. Let me take off these 2 slides. I don't need to have those there. Those are extra slides I forgot to take out. Bear with me 1 second. I could take those out right now. All right. There you have it. So we're going to deal with, not tonight, our next lesson will be the Great Tribulations. We're going to break down the Great Tribulations. And I hope and pray this helps you guys. Let's give some shout outs here. Let's give some shout outs. I think this is one of the few nights in a while that we got to really start on time. And we're concluding at a good time as well. But let's give some shout outs again. I see some additional super chats here. So let's go ahead and give some shout outs, family. Let's see here. All right. Let's see what we have that came in. Let's start with content in Yah Shalom. Peace and blessings to you and your precious family. Thank you for content in Yah. I said content in Yah, for butchering your name. Charge it to my head, not to my heart. Really appreciate you. Content in Yah. Thank you for the contributions. Really appreciate you. Shakar. Want to thank you for the love and support tonight as well. Kaya, right? Or Kaya. Much love, Pastor. Really appreciate you. Kaya, right? Really appreciate you. Breath of Life. Really appreciate you. Hallelujah. Much love and support as well. Really appreciate you guys. Eddie True Love. Thank you for the love and support. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Eddie True Love. Really appreciate it. Georgetta. Thank you for the love and support. Thank you for holding down the super chat. Really appreciate you. Thank you all moderators for holding it down. Thank you for holding it down. All of you guys for typing in, listen with intelligence. That's going to be the thing for now on. When we see people are starting to try to take the conversation into a place that they don't need to take it to, just type in listen with intelligence, right? That's going to be our thing that we do here. Tangi Yah. Black to My Roots. Thank you for the love and support again. Can't wait for your book, Dawadah. For all you do, Pastor Kelly, we love, respect, and appreciate you. Again, I appreciate all you guys. Amelia. Thank you for the love and support. The Holy Spirit is in this teaching. Our praises to the Most High. Thank you for being the vessel that has blessed us with this teaching. Thank you for the love and support. And elder, last but not least, that is in the building. Thank you for the love and support. Really appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do and the support over the years, the words of encouragement. Really appreciate you. And family, I hope and pray that this helps you guys, especially for some of you guys that may not have a place to assemble. But we're working on some things here at PFR to really get some of you guys connected to the ministry. If you want to be under our ministry, be connected to the ministry. And I have some things that I'm working on right now, an interactive website, really it's a web application that I created years ago, a portal, but I'm working on it right now on getting it back online. I see it internally, but there's been some things that's been happening that from, I'll just say Comcast and these places trying to keep my site from going out. So I'm working on transitioning it to some external servers. All right. But we'll get those things in place. But I want to say thank you again, family, for the love and support. I really appreciate you guys, and family, have a blessed Shabbat. And again, I'll be back online on We Woke Now Extended I normally take the floor about 12:20, 12:30. We will show some of the worship because our daughters are home this week from school. So, we're going to record, let you guys listen to some of our daughters who are doing their things as musicians. Really appreciate you guys. So really appreciate all that you do. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow on We Woke Now Extended. So with that being said, family, in the words of Yahweh that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 to 14, he said to them, he told Moses to give these words to them: fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, you will never have to deal with them again. They will never have power over you ever again. They may exist in somebody else's life, but they will never have power over you again. They may cause other people problems, but they will not cause you problems anymore, because the Most High will fight for us, family. But the key is we have to learn how to hold our peace, listen with intelligence. The Hebrew word there is charash, which means be quiet. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.